It started on a quiet Sunday morning, one of those slow, ordinary days where nothing should go wrong. The sun was slipping through the blinds, coffee was still warm, and she was humming in the kitchen while scrolling her phone. For a moment, life felt normal. Predictable. Safe. I went to take out the trash, something I'd done 1,000 times, and that's when I saw it. A pregnancy test. Wrapped in paper towel. Hidden under layers of coffee grounds and leftovers. I don't know why I picked it up. Maybe curiosity. Maybe instinct. But the second I saw the faint pink lines, something inside me stopped. Positive. At first, I didn't think. I just stood there, holding it, my pulse hammering in my ears. Then the logic hit, the impossible kind. 6 months ago, I'd had a vasectomy. Quietly. Secretly. My wife didn't even know. We'd talked about it, kids, family, the future, and she'd always said 2 were enough. But after the second child, something in me broke a little. The long nights, the fights, the way she looked at me like I was just a part of the furniture. I decided that if she ever changed her mind, I'd still have control. That decision, back then, felt like taking my life back. Now it felt like a curse. I went back inside, my hands shaking slightly, and threw the test back into the trash bag. I tied it up too tight, almost like I could erase what I'd seen. She was sitting on the couch, legs tucked under her, watching some home renovation show. When she looked up, her eyes were calm, maybe too calm. "Everything okay?" she asked. I smiled. "Yeah. Just taking out the trash." It sounded normal. I sounded normal. But my mind was screaming. That night, I couldn't sleep. She turned in her sleep a few times, sighed, reached out to touch my arm, something she hadn't done in months. And all I could think was, why now? I started replaying the past weeks. The new perfume. The late nights at the gym. The sudden smiles at her phone. I'd brushed it all off before, told myself she was just reclaiming her confidence. Now every small thing felt like a confession I'd missed. Around 2 a.m., I got up, went to the kitchen, and poured a drink I didn't even want. If the test was new, and it had to be, then someone else had given her what I physically couldn't. The thought crawled under my skin and stayed there. By morning, I was exhausted but strangely calm. She kissed me on the cheek before leaving for work, quick, distracted, routine. I watched her go, wondering if she'd kissed someone else with the same absent-minded affection. I didn't confront her. Not that day. Not yet. You don't walk into a storm unarmed. Instead, I decided to observe. Every glance. Every call. Every word. That afternoon, I noticed her purse lying open on the counter, her phone half visible. I told myself I wouldn't look. I even walked away. But my hands had a mind of their own. There were messages, recently deleted threads. A contact saved under a woman's name but with no profile picture. It wasn't proof, but it was close enough. I felt something in me harden. That night, I sat on the porch, watching the sun sink behind the houses, and realized I didn't even want the truth from her mouth. I wanted it from her actions. And I was about to get it. The next morning, I left for work early, or at least that's what she thought. I parked down the street instead, coffee in hand, and waited. At 8:30, a car pulled up. Not one I recognized. She stepped outside, dressed too well for her usual errands, and got in without hesitation. The man driving, tall, clean-cut, smiled when she opened the door. He didn't touch her. But he didn't have to. The way she smiled back said everything. They drove off, and I didn't follow. I didn't need to. When I came back home hours later, she was there, cheerful, pretending to fold laundry. I asked how her day was. She said, uneventful. And that word, uneventful, made me laugh. Quietly. Bitterly. That night, as I lay beside her again, I thought about the first time we met. How I'd believed she was different. How I'd promised I'd never doubt her. And now, all I wanted was to stop caring. But I couldn't. Not yet. Because a part of me still needed to know just how deep the lies went. I didn't know it then, but within 24 hours, I'd hear the truth straight from her mouth, not to me, but to someone else. And once I did, there would be no going back. The next day, everything looked ordinary, that kind of cruel normalcy that makes betrayal almost invisible. She was making breakfast, humming, scrolling through her phone. The kids were laughing at some cartoon in the living room. If I hadn't known better, I would have thought we were fine. Maybe even happy. But something inside me had changed. I was detached, watching my life like a movie I'd already seen. Every gesture, every tone, every look, it all felt staged now. She left around 10 to run errands. I waited 10 minutes, then went upstairs to get something from our room. That's when I heard it, her voice. Soft, low, but unmistakably hers. She hadn't left yet. She was in the guest room, talking on the phone. I froze in the hallway, close enough to hear but far enough to stay unseen. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. At first, her words were normal. Then she said something that made my entire body go cold. Of course I'll tell him it's his. He never notices anything. Silence. My stomach twisted. It worked with the first one. My lover isn't ready for kids. The words came out of her mouth casually, like she was talking about groceries, not destroying lives. For a moment, everything in me went numb. I couldn't move. Couldn't think. Couldn't even feel angry. Just an empty, echoing disbelief. It worked with the first one. That meant exactly what I thought it did. Our first child, the one I'd held in my arms, the one who looked up at me and smiled, wasn't mine. I backed away slowly, terrified she'd hear my breath. I made it to the kitchen, sat at the table, and stared at my hands. They were trembling. There's a special kind of pain that comes when your whole reality collapses, and you still have to act normal. When she came downstairs a few minutes later, she smiled. "Heading out," she said, grabbing her bag. I looked up and nodded. "Drive safe." My voice sounded like someone else's. As the door closed behind her, I let out the breath I'd been holding for what felt like forever. For the next few hours, I just sat there, cycling between disbelief and fury, love and hatred, grief and clarity. I thought about confronting her. About demanding the truth. But then I realized, what good would that do? She'd lie. Cry. Twist it until I doubted myself again. So instead, I started planning. First, I needed to know who he was, the man who'd been in my house without ever stepping inside. The man who'd taken what wasn't his. And more than that, I wanted to know if she'd done this before. That evening, when she got home, she acted like nothing had happened. Cooked dinner. Asked about my day. Kissed me goodnight. And I played along. Because I wanted to see what a liar looked like when she thought no one was watching. Over the next few days, I gathered the pieces. Bank notifications for transfers she couldn't explain. Messages that vanished minutes after she read them. A hidden photo folder on her phone named recipes, but with no recipes in it. I didn't need a confession. I had the truth, piece by piece, and it was enough to burn everything down. Still, I didn't explode. I didn't scream or throw things. That would have given her control. Instead, I chose silence. Calculation. One night, she fell asleep early, her phone still glowing beside her. I turned off the alarm she'd set and scrolled through the contacts until I found the name that didn't belong, Lisa. Except there were no messages about friendship or work. Just carefully timed calls, short ones. And a few photos, cropped hands, familiar rooms, hotel sheets. I stared at them until my chest went tight. Then I turned off the screen and lay beside her. Her breathing was steady. Peaceful. And I thought, how easy it must be to live without guilt when you've convinced yourself you deserve to. By morning, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to confront her at all. I wasn't going to demand answers or listen to rehearsed apologies. I was going to vanish, but not quietly. I'd leave behind something she couldn't explain away. Something that would destroy the little world she'd built on lies. That day, while she took the kids to her mother's, I found the pregnancy test again, the one she thought she'd hidden. I put it in an envelope. No note. No name. Just the truth. Then I searched his number, traced it back through an old message she'd accidentally backed up. It led me to his wife's social media. A real woman. Real pictures. Family photos, 2 kids, a house that looked eerily like ours. She looked kind. Innocent. Someone who didn't deserve this either. I hesitated for hours, staring at the address I'd found. My hand hovered over the envelope, my name already fading from the return corner I'd written and crossed out. When I finally mailed it, I didn't feel relief. Just emptiness. Because even if she paid for what she'd done, I'd still lost everything. The family I thought I had, the life I thought was real, the man I thought I was. That night, she came home late again. Smelled like wine. Smiled like nothing had changed. And for the first time, I didn't feel anything at all. I watched her laugh at something on her phone. Then she looked up at me and said, "Why are you staring like that?" I smiled. Just thinking how lucky I am. She laughed, kissed me, and walked away. I knew it was the last time she'd ever see me like this, calm, quiet, pretending. Because the next morning, she'd wake up to an empty house. And a truth that couldn't be buried in any trash bag. The morning I left, the world looked deceptively peaceful. The air was cool. The kitchen smelled like her coffee. She kissed me goodbye, same as always, light, distracted, as if I were an afterthought she had to check off her list before heading to work. I watched her car pull out of the driveway, her taillights disappearing down the street, and that was it. That was the last moment we existed in the same life. I walked back inside, stood in the hallway, and just listened to the silence. It felt heavier than I expected. Every photo on the wall was a lie. Every framed smile, every hand held too tightly in front of the camera, proof of a story that never really happened. I sat on the edge of our bed and looked around. Her perfume on the nightstand. Her hairbrush. The half-folded laundry she'd left the night before. It wasn't heartbreak anymore, it was clarity. And clarity hurts in a different way. It doesn't make you cry. It just drains you until there's nothing left. I opened the closet and started packing. Not in anger. Not in haste. Each shirt folded neatly. Each drawer emptied methodically. It felt like cleaning up after a stranger. In the middle of it all, I found the small box I'd hidden months earlier, the clinic receipt from the vasectomy. I remember holding it that morning, thinking it was my safety net, my invisible line of control. Now it was just a reminder that I'd been trying to protect myself from the wrong person all along. I placed it in the same envelope where the pregnancy test used to be. That envelope was gone now, sent to a woman who, by now, had probably opened it, gasped, and realized her world wasn't real either. Maybe she was sitting somewhere, crying over a truth that had been whispered in 2 homes at once. I didn't feel guilty about that. She deserved to know. We both did. By noon, everything I owned fit into 2 suitcases and a small duffel. I left her things untouched. I wanted her to see what she'd done, to walk into an echo. Before I left, I went through the house one last time. The kitchen, where she laughed too easily on phone calls that weren't meant for me. The living room, where we once danced at midnight, before life got too heavy. Our bedroom, where I thought I was safe. I didn't leave a note. What could I possibly write? Found the truth. You win? No. I wanted my absence to speak for me. I locked the door from the outside and dropped the key through the mail slot. It hit the floor with a hollow clink that sounded like an ending. I drove without music. Just silence and the hum of the road. I didn't know where I was going, only that it had to be far enough that her voice couldn't reach me. 2 hours later, I pulled over by a gas station. I sat in the car, staring at the steering wheel, trying to decide what came next. It hit me then, there was no next. Not yet. Because when someone shatters your reality like that, it doesn't end cleanly. It unravels in slow motion. My phone buzzed once. A message from her. Hey, can you grab milk on your way home? I stared at it until the screen went dark. That single line, so mundane, said everything. She had no idea I was gone. No clue the life she'd built was already collapsing from the inside. I threw the phone into the passenger seat and started the engine again. It felt like I was driving out of a coma. Hours passed. Cities blurred. By evening, I found a small roadside motel, one of those forgotten places where no one asks questions. I checked in under my middle name, dropped the bags by the door, and sat on the bed. The silence was deafening. It wasn't peace yet, just the sound of detachment. I turned my phone back on. There were 5 missed calls from her. Then 8. Then 12. By the next morning, 23. Voicemails filled the inbox, her voice trembling, then angry, then scared. Where are you? Is this about something I said? Please talk to me. The last one was quieter. I know you know. Please, let's just talk. But she was too late. The truth was already spreading, because the other woman had answered. Around noon, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something in me said I should. A woman's voice, soft, broken. Is this her husband? I didn't speak. She continued, I got something in the mail today. I think you sent it. There was a pause. A shaky breath. I just wanted to say, thank you. Those words hit harder than I expected. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just understood. We both did. 2 strangers, linked by betrayal, speaking a language only the broken can understand. We talked for a while, not about them, but about the strange silence that follows the truth. Before hanging up, she said, you did the right thing. When the call ended, I sat in the dim light of the motel room and realized she was wrong. There's no right thing when it comes to betrayal. There's only what hurts less. That night, I watched the phone light up again, her number flashing over and over, desperate. And I did nothing. Because sometimes silence is the only way to be heard. I lay back on the bed, eyes open, listening to the hum of the old air conditioner. For the first time in months, my mind was quiet. Not healed. Not free. Just quiet. 3 days passed. 3 days of silence, unanswered calls, unread messages. I'd turned off the notifications, but I still checked. Not because I wanted to hear from her, but because some part of me needed to see what desperation looked like. By the 4th day, she'd stopped calling. That's when I knew she finally understood. I wasn't coming back. I thought that was the end of it. Until my phone rang again. The number was unfamiliar. I hesitated before answering. A woman's voice came through, calm, older, almost gentle. I think you should know what's happening here. It was his wife, the one I'd sent the envelope to. She sounded different this time. More composed, like someone who'd spent days rearranging her pain into something that resembled clarity. He denied it at first, she said. Then he broke down. It's true. Everything. The affair, the pregnancy, all of it. I didn't speak. There wasn't much to say. I threw him out, she continued. And then she called me. That made me sit up. She called you? Yes. She tried to apologize. Tried to blame him. She said she didn't mean for things to go this far. That she just wanted to feel wanted again. I closed my eyes. That sounded like her, the half apology that turns guilt into pity. I told her I didn't want her apology, the woman said quietly. But she wanted me to give you a message. I exhaled slowly. What message? There was a pause. Then she said it, soft, almost reluctant. She said, tell him I'm sorry. Tell him it was never supposed to be like this. Tell him I still love him. Silence filled the line. It was strange, I'd imagined hearing those words 100 times before, in different versions. I'd imagined her crying, begging, explaining. But now that I heard them, spoken through someone else, they felt empty. Distant. Like echoes of a life that wasn't mine anymore. Finally, I said, thank you for letting me know. The woman hesitated. What are you going to do? I looked out the window of the motel room. The world outside was gray and quiet, the kind of morning that doesn't promise anything. I'm going to start over, I said. This time without pretending. She was silent for a while. Then she said, good. You deserve that. When the call ended, I just sat there, staring at my reflection in the dark screen of my phone. I looked older. Tired. But also, lighter. It's strange how freedom can look so much like emptiness at first. That afternoon, I drove back into the city. Not home, I didn't even think of it as home anymore, but somewhere nearby, just to feel the ground under my feet again. I parked near the park where we used to take the kids on weekends. Families were laughing. Dogs chasing frisbees. Life was still happening, indifferent, unstoppable. I sat on a bench and watched for a while. A small boy ran past, his hand clutching his father's. They were laughing about something, and for a second, I felt a sting of grief so sharp it almost took my breath. I wasn't angry at the child. I wasn't even angry at her anymore. What I felt was simpler, the kind of sadness that comes when you finally understand something you can't change. Maybe that was the point of all of it. Some people break you to teach you who you are without them. That night, I checked into a small apartment I'd found online. Bare walls. No pictures. No history. I unpacked slowly, setting down the few things I'd kept, a watch, a few shirts, an old photo of me before everything went wrong. I looked at that photo for a long time. I didn't look happy, but I looked honest. That was enough. Weeks passed. Her messages turned from anger to pleading, then to silence. Once, I saw her name flash across my screen again, this time from an unknown number. The message was short. Please, can we talk? Just once. I didn't reply. Not out of spite, but because there was nothing left to say that could change what had already been destroyed. Some nights, I still thought about what she told that other woman, I still love him. But love, I realized, doesn't mean anything if it doesn't come with honesty. And hers never did. A month later, I got one last call from the same number. It wasn't her this time. It was her mother. She wanted me to tell you she's moving away, she said softly. She's not doing well. She says she doesn't blame you. I closed my eyes. For the first time, I felt something close to peace, not because she was gone, but because I finally was. After the call, I went for a walk. The city lights flickered against the wet pavement. Somewhere, a street musician was playing guitar, a song I didn't recognize but somehow understood. And standing there in the middle of strangers, I realized something simple. You don't need closure from the person who hurt you. You just need to stop reopening the wound. Months later, I received a letter, no return name, but I knew her handwriting instantly. I didn't open it. I burned it on the balcony and watched the smoke drift upward. Because sometimes, the only way to move on is to never know what they wanted to say.